What if I told you that the loudest person in the room is often the weakest? Think about it. The ones who boast the most, argue the hardest, and constantly explain themselves, do they ever seem truly powerful? Or do they seem desperate for validation? Now picture this, a room filled with voices, everyone talking, debating, proving themselves. But in the corner, one man remains silent. He doesn't rush to speak, he doesn't argue, he just listens, observes. And then, after a long pause, he says a single sentence. Suddenly, the entire room shifts. That's the power of silence. History's greatest minds, leaders, warriors, Stoic philosophers, understood this. They didn't waste words. They didn't seek approval. They controlled the room without saying a word. So ask yourself, why do the most dominant figures speak the least? Why do the wise remain silent while the reckless rush to talk? Today we uncover a truth that most people completely miss: the unbreakable power of silence. By the end of this video, you won't just understand why silence is powerful. You'll know exactly how to use it as your greatest weapon. But first, let's address the biggest myth about silence, because most people get it completely wrong. 1. The biggest misconception about silence. Most people don't understand silence. They see it as a sign of uncertainty, a lack of confidence, or even weakness. Society glorifies the loud, the ones who talk the most, who dominate conversations, who make their presence known with noise. If you don't speak up, they say, you'll be ignored, you'll be forgotten. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Silence is not weakness, it is power. Think about the last time you were in a group conversation. Who did people focus on the most? Was it the one constantly talking, filling every pause with their voice? Or was it the person who said little, but when they did speak, every head turned to listen? The reality is, the more you speak, the more predictable you become. But when you hold back, when you say only what is necessary, you create an air of mystery, and mystery is power. Yet the world continues to misunderstand silence. The first major misconception is that silence means you have nothing to say. Wrong. In fact, the most intelligent minds speak only when necessary. They don't waste words. They don't feel the need to fill every gap in a conversation. They understand that when you stay silent, you force others to pay attention when you finally do speak. This is a psychological effect. When something is rare, it becomes more valuable. People who talk all the time are easily ignored, but those who speak rarely are impossible to forget. The second misconception is that silence makes you invisible, that if you don't constantly remind people of your presence, you'll fade into the background. But that's not true. Silence doesn't erase you, it amplifies you. Have you ever noticed that the most intriguing people are often the ones who don't reveal too much about themselves? The less you say, the more people wonder about you. Human nature hates uncertainty, so when someone doesn't talk much, others automatically assume they must know something important. The mind fills in the blanks. People start assigning them qualities, wisdom, strength, authority, even if they haven't done anything to prove it. That's why those who use silence strategically often appear more composed, more intelligent, and more powerful. The third and most dangerous misconception is that people respect those who talk the most. Society rewards extroversion, those who are always speaking, always sharing their opinions. But in reality, respect is never about how much you say, it's about the weight of your words. People who command true respect are not those who dominate every conversation, but those who choose their words carefully. Think of the greatest leaders in history. They weren't the ones who talked the loudest. They were the ones who spoke with precision. When they opened their mouths, people stopped to listen. Not because they were loud, but because they had mastered the art of speaking only when necessary. The more you talk, the more predictable you become, and predictability kills power. When people always know what you're going to say, your words lose their impact. But when you cultivate an air of quiet confidence, when you resist the urge to fill every silence, you make others lean in. You create curiosity, and curiosity is a force more powerful than persuasion. This isn't just a theory. It has been proven time and time again. Some of the most powerful people in history, from emperors to CEOs, have used silence as a weapon. In ancient Rome, there was a general who never raised his voice in battle. While his enemies shouted commands, trying to control their soldiers through sheer noise, he remained silent, giving only brief, decisive orders. His men followed him without question, not because he demanded authority with words, but because his silence projected something stronger, absolute control. Even in modern times, this principle holds. Warren Buffett, one of the world's greatest investors, is known for his ability to listen more than he speaks. He doesn't rush to give his opinion. He waits, he observes, and when he does speak, his words carry immense weight. Not because he's louder than others, but because he's built a reputation of only speaking when he has something truly valuable to say. The same applies to some of the greatest minds in business, politics, and philosophy. They understand that when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop talking just to be heard, you shift the dynamic. You force people to pay attention. You make them wonder, and in that wondering, you gain power. So why is this concept so hard for people to grasp? Because we live in a world addicted to noise. Social media rewards those who constantly share their thoughts. People are taught from a young age to speak up, to be vocal, to never let a moment of silence linger. But what if everything we've been taught is wrong? What if true influence doesn't come from being the loudest, but from mastering when to be silent? Think of a great chess player. They don't move their pieces impulsively. They wait. They observe their opponent's moves, and only when the time is right do they strike. Silence works the same way. Those who don't understand it waste their energy trying to prove themselves. But those who do understand it, those who can control their words, are always 5 steps ahead. And here's the final truth. The less you speak, the more control you have over your own mind. People who talk excessively are often ruled by their emotions. They react, they defend, they explain. But those who embrace silence are in control. They are not swayed by the opinions of others. They do not feel the need to justify themselves. They do not let words escape their lips carelessly, and because of that, they hold a power that few will ever understand. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, to jump into an argument, to speak just to fill the silence, pause. Ask yourself, is this truly necessary? Or is this just my ego trying to prove something? The answer will tell you everything you need to know. This isn't just about speaking less, it's about thinking more. It's about understanding that silence, when used correctly, is not just the absence of noise, it is the presence of control. And this is why some of the most legendary figures in history used silence as their greatest weapon. Let me tell you a story. 2. The story of a Roman gladiator. The power of silence. The roar of the crowd was deafening. In the heart of the Grand Colosseum, warriors stood side by side, each one brimming with a fiery intensity, their voices filling the air with threats, boasts, and declarations of victory. It was a common strategy: intimidate the opponent before the battle even begins. Some shouted out their past triumphs, while others swore they would make their enemies kneel in defeat. Every warrior sought to establish dominance through sheer volume. But then there was one. Among the fierce and aggressive men stood a single gladiator who never spoke a word. He did not taunt, did not brag, did not engage in the ritual of verbal warfare that had become a staple of the pre-fight spectacle. He simply stood, silent, his gaze fixed on his opponent, with an unsettling stillness. Some mistook his silence for fear. Others saw it as indifference. But those who had fought him before knew better. This man was not silent because he was weak. He was silent because he was in control. As the battle began, his opponent charged forward, his face twisted in fury, shouting as he swung his sword wildly. But the silent gladiator did not react. He did not flinch, did not meet his opponent's aggression with aggression. Instead, he simply observed. He let his opponent's anger consume him, let his frustration build as his attacks became wilder and less calculated. And then, in a moment of complete clarity, when the enemy had exhausted himself in a flurry of wasted movements, he struck. One clean, decisive motion, executed with the precision of a man who had been waiting for the perfect opportunity. The battle was over before the crowd even understood what had happened. The warrior who had spent all his energy in rage and noise now lay on the ground, defeated, while the silent gladiator stood, calm and composed, as if nothing had changed. The audience, stunned by the efficiency of the fight, erupted in cheers. But he did not celebrate. He did not acknowledge their admiration. He simply turned and walked away, his silence speaking louder than any victory cry ever could. That is the power of silence. It creates uncertainty. It forces others to react emotionally while you remain in control. When people can't read you, they start to doubt themselves. They become uneasy, nervous, and in that doubt, they make mistakes. Silence is a weapon sharper than any sword, and those who master it hold an unshakable advantage. But beyond that, silence preserves energy. Talking, explaining, engaging in unnecessary battles, it all drains you. True warriors, whether on the battlefield or in life, do not waste their energy proving themselves. They conserve it, using only what is necessary, striking only when the moment is right. This is why the silent gladiator always won. While his opponents wasted themselves in empty aggression, he stayed still, watched, and waited. He understood something they never did. Power isn't in noise, it's in restraint. Silence also amplifies action. When you rarely speak, when you do not constantly announce your intentions, your actions become magnified. People pay attention because they know that when you do move, when you do speak, it will be significant. The gladiator did not need to boast about his skills. He let his sword speak for him, and in doing so, he commanded more respect than any words ever could. The lessons from this story go far beyond the arena. This principle is universal. Look at the world's greatest strategists, leaders, and thinkers. They all understood the immense power of silence. Napoleon Bonaparte, one of history's greatest military minds, famously said, "Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake." He knew that silence was not passive. It was a tool of control. He let others exhaust themselves, let them reveal their weaknesses, while he sat back and calculated his next move. And when the time was right, he acted decisively. The same is true in modern times. Some of the world's most powerful businessmen and political figures practice this exact strategy. They do not engage in meaningless debates. They do not respond to every attack. They do not waste words trying to prove themselves. They understand that true power does not need validation. It simply exists. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors in history, is known for his ability to listen more than he speaks. When he attends meetings, he rarely says much at first. He absorbs, he analyzes, and only when he has a clear, calculated response does he speak. And when he does, everyone listens, because they know that when he speaks, it is worth hearing. Silence is not about withholding, it is about mastering control. In a world where everyone is talking, trying to outshout one another, the ones who remain silent stand out. They make others wonder, and in that wondering, they gain power. When you don't reveal everything about yourself, people start to assign meaning to your silence. They begin to see you as someone worth noticing, someone worth listening to. This is why some of the most legendary figures in history practice the art of controlled silence. The Stoics understood it centuries ago. They believed in speaking only when necessary, in observing more than reacting, in mastering emotions through restraint. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome, filled his personal journal with reflections on self-control, often reminding himself that not every thought needed to be spoken, that not every battle needed to be fought with words. Even today, in an era of constant noise, the principles of silence remain unchanged. The one who speaks the least often controls the conversation. The one who remains calm while others react emotionally always has the advantage. The one who waits, watches, and only acts when necessary will always be 5 steps ahead. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you feel the need to prove something, ask yourself, is it truly necessary? Or is your ego simply demanding validation? More often than not, you'll find that silence is the better choice. It gives you the time to think, the space to analyze, and most importantly, it keeps you in control. And if you ever doubt this, just remember the gladiator who never spoke, the one who let his actions define him, the one who stood silent while others exhausted themselves in noise, the one who never needed words, because his silence was more powerful than anything they could say. 3. The Stoic lesson: why silence is true power. The Stoics understood something that most people never will. Silence is not just an absence of noise, but a tool of immense power. In a world where everyone is desperate to be heard, the one who speaks the least often holds the most control. The ability to remain silent in moments of tension, to withhold words when emotions are high, and to resist the urge to prove oneself is not just wisdom, it is mastery over the self. Epictetus, one of the most respected Stoic philosophers, once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." It was not just advice on communication, it was a reflection of a deeper truth. Those who listen more and speak less gain a greater understanding of the world and the people around them. The one who talks constantly reveals too much, exposes their weaknesses, and loses their ability to influence others. But the one who listens, who chooses words with precision, commands respect effortlessly. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor of Rome, practiced this principle throughout his life. He wrote in his private journal, "Think before you speak." Many times, silence is the best answer. This was not just a personal mantra, but a guiding principle for ruling an empire. He understood that silence was not avoidance, nor was it passivity. It was a deliberate act of control. In times of conflict, those who reacted emotionally were easily manipulated, but those who remained composed, who let silence settle before responding, dictated the terms of the conversation. Silence is a form of control. The moment you engage in every argument, respond to every provocation, or explain yourself to those who don't deserve an explanation, you give away your power. When you choose silence instead, you shift the burden onto others. They expect a reaction, but when they get nothing, they become uneasy. They start questioning themselves. They analyze their own words and actions more than they analyze you. This is a powerful psychological effect. Most people speak because they want certainty. They want to be reassured, validated, or affirmed. But when you withhold your words, you create uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, you gain control. Beyond power, silence earns respect. The world is filled with empty words, with promises that are never fulfilled, with people who talk about what they will do but never act. But those who do not speak unless necessary, whose words are rare but valuable, naturally command attention. There is a reason why people listen when Warren Buffett speaks, why every word from a respected leader carries more weight than the constant chatter of the masses. It is not about volume, it is about scarcity. The less you speak, the more people value what you say. Silence is also a weapon against manipulation. Many people talk too much because they feel the need to explain themselves, to justify their actions, or to correct misunderstandings. But the reality is, those who truly understand you do not need explanations, and those who do not wish to understand you will never be convinced, no matter how much you talk. Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against the accusations, but reply, 'You obviously don't know about my other vices, or else you would have mentioned them as well.'" This is the ultimate example of how silence can disarm criticism. Instead of trying to defend himself, he embraced it with unshakable confidence, leaving his critics powerless. Talking scatters your thoughts. Every time you speak without necessity, you dilute your focus. True wisdom requires reflection, and reflection requires silence. This is why the greatest philosophers spent hours in solitude, not because they rejected the world, but because they understood that clarity comes from within. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, emphasized the importance of spending time in silence to sharpen the mind. He believed that those who could not be alone with their own thoughts were slaves to external noise. But how do you apply this in real life? The first step is mastering the art of pausing. When someone challenges you, when an argument arises, when emotions are high, resist the impulse to react immediately. Take a breath. Let the silence settle. Most of the time, you will find that what you were about to say was unnecessary. In moments of conflict, silence is not weakness, it is strategy. The one who stays silent while others reveal their emotions is always in control. Another practical application is learning to listen more than you speak. Instead of rushing to share your opinion, try withholding it. Let others talk. Observe how they reveal themselves, how they expose their own thoughts and motivations. You will quickly notice that people reveal far more about themselves when you stay silent than when you engage with them. This is the secret of great negotiators, of skilled leaders, of those who control a room without raising their voice. Silence also allows you to choose your words with precision. Instead of speaking impulsively, wasting words on meaningless chatter, cultivate the habit of speaking only when necessary. When you do speak, let every word carry weight. This is what separates those who are respected from those who are ignored. One of the hardest but most powerful ways to practice silence is to stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You do not owe everyone an explanation for your decisions. You do not need to justify yourself to those who do not respect you. The moment you realize this, you free yourself from the burden of constantly trying to prove something to others. Let them wonder, let them assume, let them talk. The ones who matter will understand without you needing to say a word. The Stoics mastered the art of controlled silence because they understood that in restraint there is strength. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. The one who remains calm, who listens more than they speak, who refuses to be baited into unnecessary battles, that is the person who holds true influence. So the next time you find yourself about to speak, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this valuable? Or is this just my ego seeking validation? If the answer is the latter, hold your silence. Because in a world addicted to noise, the one who can master silence will always stand above the rest. 4. Practicing silence. The 7-day Stoic challenge. Understanding the power of silence is one thing, mastering it is another. In a world that demands constant engagement, where people react impulsively and fill every space with noise, choosing silence is a skill that must be cultivated. It is not easy. It requires discipline, self-awareness, and a willingness to detach from the need for validation. But for those who take on this challenge, the rewards are immense. Calmness in the face of chaos, an unshakable presence, and a newfound ability to control not only your own mind, but the reactions of those around you. This is not just a theory, it is a practice. The Stoics did not simply write about wisdom, they lived it. And if you want to embody the power of silence, you must train yourself in it. For the next 7 days, you will take on a challenge. Each day will push you to confront your habits, to resist the urge to speak when unnecessary, and to develop a deeper level of self-control. The goal is not to remain silent indefinitely, but to learn how to wield silence as a tool, to use it when it serves you, and to break free from the compulsion to react impulsively. On the first day, your task is simple but powerful. When someone provokes you, do not react. Do not defend yourself. Do not explain. Do not argue. Instead, pause. Let them say what they need to say. If necessary, just offer a small smile and say nothing more. Watch what happens. The person expects a reaction. They expect engagement. When they don't get it, they are left with their own words, their own emotions. Silence forces them to reflect, to fill in the blanks themselves. It disarms them. But more importantly, it gives you control. You are no longer playing their game. You are no longer allowing them to dictate your state of mind. The second day will require you to shift your approach in conversations. Instead of speaking about yourself, instead of jumping in to share your opinion, focus entirely on asking questions. Let others talk. Let them reveal themselves. This does 2 things. First, it makes you more aware of how much people crave attention, how deeply they want to be heard. And second, it strengthens your ability to observe. When you ask questions, instead of offering immediate opinions, you gather information. You see what motivates people, what they fear, what they are hiding. The less you say, the more you learn. On the third day, you will step away from one of the biggest sources of noise in the modern world, social media. Do not comment, do not argue, do not impulsively react to every post you see. Instead, just observe. Notice how quickly people rush to have an opinion on everything, how eager they are to be seen and heard. Realize that most of it is meaningless. Step back, and instead of engaging, spend that time thinking. This is a critical practice in training your mind to detach from unnecessary distractions. By the fourth day, you will have developed a greater awareness of your impulses, and now you will apply that awareness to criticism. If someone criticizes you, resist the urge to defend yourself. Do not explain, do not justify. Just let your actions speak. If the criticism is valid, acknowledge it internally and make the necessary improvements. If it is not, let it go. People waste enormous amounts of energy trying to correct misunderstandings, trying to convince others of their worth. But the truth is, those who respect you do not need an explanation, and those who do not respect you will never be convinced by words alone. Let them think what they will. Focus on action. The fifth day is perhaps the hardest. Eliminate all complaints. No matter what happens, do not complain. Do not express frustration. If something is wrong, fix it. If you cannot fix it, accept it. Complaining is one of the most useless habits, and yet most people indulge in it daily. It serves no purpose other than to reinforce a negative mindset. By refusing to complain, you train yourself to become solution-oriented. You learn to direct your energy toward what matters. This single day alone can be life-changing. On the sixth day, you will practice the art of true listening. Not passive listening, where you are merely waiting for your turn to speak, but real, deep listening. When someone talks, do not think about your response. Do not mentally prepare your reply. Just listen. Absorb every word. This forces you to be present, to fully engage with what is being said, rather than reacting automatically. It is an incredibly powerful skill, one that makes you more perceptive, more insightful, and ultimately more respected. Finally, on the seventh day, you will embrace silence fully. Set aside at least 30 minutes to sit in complete silence. No phone, no music, no conversations, just you and your thoughts. Observe what comes up. Most people avoid silence because they are uncomfortable with their own minds. They seek distractions to escape themselves. But facing your own thoughts without interference is one of the most valuable practices you can cultivate. It strengthens your ability to think clearly, to reflect deeply, and to remain calm in any situation. If you complete these 7 days, you will notice profound changes. You will be calmer, more in control. You will speak less, but be heard more. People will start to pay closer attention to what you say, because your words will carry more weight. They will respect you more, not because you demand it, but because silence creates an undeniable presence. You will also find yourself thinking more clearly, focusing more deeply, and reacting less impulsively. But beyond these external effects, the greatest benefit of this challenge is internal. You will have begun mastering your own mind. You will no longer be a slave to the need for attention, to the impulse to react, to the habit of wasting words. You will understand that true strength does not come from proving yourself. It comes from knowing that you do not need to. And now, the only question left is this: are you ready to take on the challenge? The 7-day Stoic Silence Challenge is not just an exercise in restraint. It is a transformation in how you interact with the world and more importantly, with yourself. By consciously practicing silence, you have begun to shift your mindset from reaction to control, from noise to clarity. You have experienced firsthand how silence disarms those who seek to provoke you, how it sharpens your awareness, and how it creates a presence that commands respect without effort. More than just a test of discipline, this challenge has revealed that silence is not passive. It is an active force that shapes perception, strengthens resolve, and amplifies the power of your words. Now that you have built the foundation, it's time to go even deeper into understanding why silence works on such a profound psychological level. 5. The psychology of silence. Why it makes you powerful. Silence is more than just the absence of words. It is a psychological force that shapes the way people perceive you. It influences interactions, alters the dynamics of power, and creates an unspoken presence that commands respect. In a world where people talk endlessly, filling every moment with words, the ability to remain silent is an anomaly, and anomalies create intrigue. The reason silence is so powerful is simple. Human nature is uncomfortable with uncertainty. When someone speaks, we have something to grasp onto. But when someone withholds words, when they do not react as expected, the mind of the observer begins to race, filling in the gaps, trying to decipher the unspoken. This is why silence makes people uneasy. When you do not immediately respond, they start questioning themselves. Did they say something wrong? Are you unimpressed? Are you analyzing them? This mental discomfort often compels people to keep talking, revealing more than they intended. In negotiations, this is a well-known tactic. When one party makes an offer and the other does not respond right away, the silence creates pressure. The person who spoke first starts to second-guess themselves, often renegotiating against their own position before the other side has even said a word. In personal interactions, silence forces people to confront their own emotions. They expect a reaction, a validation of their words. When they receive nothing, they scramble to justify themselves. Silence is also a key ingredient in authority. The most powerful people in any room are rarely the ones speaking the most. They are the ones listening, observing, calculating. When they do speak, it is deliberate and impactful. This is because the human mind assigns value to scarcity. If something is abundant, it is taken for granted. If it is rare, it is treasured. The same applies to words. Those who talk excessively dilute their own influence, while those who speak selectively ensure that when they do speak, their words carry weight. This is why leaders, whether in business, politics, or history, often maintain a reserved demeanor. They do not rush to fill silences. They let them work in their favor. Beyond authority, silence also creates mystery. People are drawn to what they do not fully understand. When someone is constantly talking, constantly explaining themselves, they become predictable. But when someone remains composed, revealing little, others become curious. They start attributing qualities to that person that may or may not be true, but the point is, they are thinking about them. This psychological effect is well documented. The less information people have about you, the more they assume, and they often assume in your favor. This is why figures throughout history who have cultivated an aura of quiet confidence are often revered. It is not just their actions, but their restraint that commands attention. Understanding this psychological effect allows you to use silence as a tool in communication. Knowing when to speak and when to remain silent can shift the balance of power in any interaction. When someone challenges you, the natural instinct is to defend yourself, to explain, to argue. But what if you didn't? What if, instead of reacting, you simply let the words hang in the air? Most people are not prepared for this. They expect engagement. When they don't receive it, they become uncomfortable, and in that discomfort, they often weaken their own position. The person who reacts first is often the one who loses control. The one who remains composed dictates the pace. This is why silence is often the strongest response. When someone criticizes you, silence robs them of the reaction they are hoping for. When someone insults you, silence denies them the validation of knowing they have affected you. And when someone seeks to manipulate you, silence forces them to reconsider their approach. There is immense power in not giving people what they expect. By staying quiet, you take control of the interaction without saying a word. One of the most effective techniques in communication is what is known as the silence gap strategy. This is the deliberate use of pauses after someone speaks. Most people, when asked a question or presented with a statement, rush to respond. But those who understand the power of silence allow a pause to linger. This creates tension. The person on the other end begins to feel the weight of their own words. They start to second-guess themselves, often continuing to talk just to fill the void. In debates, in negotiations, in leadership, this technique can be a game changer. A well-timed silence can say more than any argument ever could. Silence is also essential for self-awareness. In a world of constant noise, moments of stillness are rare, but they are necessary. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology confirmed it. Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor, would begin each day with silence, writing in his personal journal in complete solitude. This was not just a habit, but a practice of mental clarity. When you sit in silence without distractions, you begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You start to recognize which emotions are fleeting and which ones matter. You gain insight into yourself that is impossible to find in the midst of endless conversation. Epictetus, another great Stoic philosopher, recommended taking a full day of silence each week. He believed that by removing speech from our daily habits, we become more observant, more in tune with our surroundings. In modern terms, this is similar to a mental detox. When you stop talking, when you stop engaging in unnecessary discussions, you conserve energy. You become more aware of the words you do choose to speak. And in doing so, you gain a greater level of control over your mind. One of the most powerful exercises to understand the impact of silence is to go a full 24 hours without speaking unless absolutely necessary. Try it. Spend an entire day saying only what is essential. You will notice something fascinating. Your mind becomes clearer. You become more aware of how much people talk unnecessarily, how much energy is wasted on words that do not serve a purpose. You also begin to realize how much of your own speech is habitual rather than intentional. After this experience, every word you choose to speak feels more deliberate, more valuable. But beyond all of this, silence is ultimately about control. Control over yourself, over how others perceive you, over the energy you allow into your life. Those who cannot remain silent are often ruled by their impulses. They react rather than respond. They speak out of habit rather than intention. But those who master silence hold an advantage that few understand. They do not rush to be heard. They do not seek validation through words. They move with purpose. They listen more than they speak. And when they do choose to break their silence, the world listens. So now, the only question left is this: how will you use this power? In a world that never stops talking, the one who masters silence holds true power. Those who speak the least often command the most respect. Those who react the slowest control the conversation. And those who understand the weight of their words shape how the world perceives them. Silence is not inaction. It is strategy. It is clarity. It is the ultimate test of self-discipline. Starting today, resist the urge to explain yourself. Speak less. Observe more. Let people wonder what you're thinking. Let your actions define you instead of your words. The more unpredictable you are, the more powerful you become. Silence forces others to think, to question, to respect. And in a world where everyone is desperate to be seen, be the one they cannot ignore. Now, the challenge is yours. Can you complete the 7-day Stoic Silence Challenge? If you're ready, type "I accept the challenge" in the comments and start today. You will be surprised by how much changes when you stop reacting and start observing. If this video gave you value, hit the like button and share it with someone who talks too much. Because maybe, just maybe, they need to hear this message. And if you want to continue this journey of self-mastery, subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming next. Remember the words of Epictetus: "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Are you strong enough to embrace silence even when the world demands noise? The choice is yours.